Today's session, we're going to continue our conversation about process tools and documenting processes. So just as a reminder of how to get to the process tools page, you can go through the organization chart once you've created your job descriptions and select a position and then select the process on that job description. You can also access a process through this for functions list. This little trail here, every time you're on a process, always shows you where that process lives on the for functions list. And this is a good trail to kind of get familiar with, because every time you're on a process, not only can you see where it lives on the for functions list, but you can also get back and forth from it. So if I click here, it's going to take me to the getting the business function, and then I see the sub-functions of the processes. So last week we talked about work plans and checklists. So just as a reminder, work plans are simply a complete step-by-step of how the tasks of that process. So explanations that start with an action, detailed as possible, using bullet points to kind of break out the tasks. Don't write things in huge paragraphs like you see here. More change up to be kind of an outline, using bullets and sub-bullets so it makes sense. And this is for just training purposes, much easier for someone to kind of follow and see documentation like this than it is for them to see it like this. So these work plans are just a step-by-step set of instructions, with the result being that a new employee could read this, study it, practice it, and know how to do the work. Remember, you can have multiple work plans if there are different workflows within the process. So this is referral development. If you have different ways that you, different audiences or different ways that you develop referrals based on that audience, then you would have multiple work plans. Checklists are for quality control. So if the process needs management information and needs quality control, it's very complicated, and the employee needs to track what they've done and what they haven't done, then use a checklist. You can take a work plan right here, and with this one click, you can turn it into a checklist, just like that. Or you can build a checklist just by clicking the checklist title, putting in the name of the checklist, and then hitting create. Then you add checklist items and build the checklist. So either way, you can build a checklist, which is just the task of the work plan built into checklist items, or you can build a checklist brand new just by clicking the checklist title. So again, use checklists when you need some quality control for the process. If that's not necessary, if it's overkill for the process, then leave this whole tool blank. Just don't use it. Next, let's talk about scripts. So to build a script is the exact same way the work plans and the checklist work. All the tools work the same way. I click the title, then TouchStone's going to prompt me for the name of my script. The purpose of it, why does this script exist? What's it here for? Then you hit create script, and the script is built. So you'll notice I've got this new script down here. To build the script, I just start by adding a script item. Once I hit this button, I'm going to see the prompt and the script fields pop open. The prompt is the question being asked or the situation that's happening. So the prompt is used to kind of explain to someone why they're saying what they're going to say over here. So this could be a question that is asked in one situation or another, and you'd literally type the question right in here and hit save. And then I go to the script side and I type in what I say to answer that question. And then save it. And then I go to the next add script item. And here I'm going to type in the second question. Save it. And then here is the answer. So these are the actual words that are spoken right here on the script side. These prompts kind of guide the employee along. They kind of show them what and how and why they're saying something. And over here is literally what they say. This tool works exactly the same way as the checklists and the work plans. I can reorder these items just by dragging them up and dragging them down. This is all click to edit here. The toolbar functionality is the same. To edit the title, everything's click to edit. So let's talk about the types of scripts you would build and why. So generally I see 3 types of scripts. There's what we call a static or a stable script, which basically means that it's one thing or 2 things that are said the same way every time. So a good example of this would be like a voicemail script. So here the prompt is leaving a voicemail message, and then here the script is the actual words that are spoken. You see how we're using here in parentheses your name, in parentheses your company. That's a good way to kind of refer to generally what the person would say, because you wouldn't put someone's name in here. You're just saying what would go in there, what they would say there. So these scripts are meant to be kind of memorized and used, and they're really, truly said the same way every time. Another type of script, which is a little more elaborate, is called a workflow script. So this is an example of that. A workflow script starts generally with a greeting or a beginning, and then it goes through a whole conversation. So it goes through all the yes, no's, and the if-thens, all the way to the end of the conversation. So these scripts are generally found in customer service processes, sales processes, scheduling appointments, service delivery where you're having to explain something, customer service, employee complaints, sometimes management processes like a performance review or one-on-one meetings or problem resolution. It's where you want to be able to articulate to the employee the way the conversation should go and the points they need to get across in that conversation and some techniques for how to handle the conversation. So with scripting, it's not meant that an employee would memorize this and use this the same way every time no matter what. It's really meant to give them some guidelines, to give them a suggested way, to give them a path to follow. Over here on the script side, these are the best techniques for how to deliver that information, how to answer that question, how to get a prospect over an objection or a hurdle, how to convince, how to give information. So this is the best way to say it. Employees will learn this, internalize it, memorize it, and then it's going to come out in their own words. So this is an important point to make, to understand for yourselves and also to understand, to make to the employee. Because sometimes employees will look at scripts and say, I'm not going to say this way every time, or I'll never memorize all this, or that's not how I would say it. And then they immediately throw up a wall to the script. So make sure you understand that, or you explain to them that this is meant for them to learn this information and then it comes out in their own words. Scripting is a fabulous way of documenting a process, documenting information, because it allows someone with a lot of experience in how to do that to articulate that in a way that they can then train someone else to understand and use that knowledge. When someone's learning something or gathering experience over years of time, they build this knowledge. And a lot of times it's necessary to, practice and make mistakes and build that knowledge. But that knowledge can be imparted to someone else, trained to someone else in less of amount of time than it took that original person to learn it. So this is how education works. We take all this experience and we teach someone that information so that they can learn it and use it. So scripting does this really well because I can put in the best way to explain something, the best way to explain how our service works, the best way to answer a question, and then someone who may not know a whole lot about that service and hasn't had 20 years of experience with it could take that information and sound very knowledgeable about it by following the script and learning the script. So this conversational or workflow script starts with the greeting, you'll notice right here, and then this is just, how you greet someone. And then maybe it could go into if yes or if no. Did you receive the letter? If yes, this is what I say. If no, this is what I say. If they say yes, they did receive the letter, well, then I move on to the next thing. Will they schedule an appointment or schedule the appointment with them? And then this is the technique for how to get them to schedule an appointment. If no, they didn't receive the letter, then this is what I say. Then explain how the program works, and then these are the words that are spoken. So this is the best possible scenario for the conversation. So that's how you want to think about workflow scripts. What is the absolute best way this could go? What is the typical way that it goes? That's an important thing to think about. What is the typical way that it goes? What is the way that you want it to go? And then document that. There's always going to be variables that occur. There's always going to be a different situation that comes up. When I sit down with salespeople and help them to document scripts, usually the first thing they say is, well, there's no way to document this because it happens differently every time. Every prospect is different. Everything I recommend is different. Everyone's got a unique situation. No product can ever work for the same client in the same way. It's just all of these variables. And when I hear them say that, I can see in their minds that their whole job is a variable, as far as they can tell, because they're having to deal with these variables, and those take most of the attention. But what they fail to recognize is what is consistent. And studies prove about 80% of the time it's the same. But they're so focused on the variables, they don't see the consistency. So look for the consistency. Look for the typical way it could go. What that gives you is a way to train someone, and it also helps every existing person to realize that when the conversation goes off track, they need to pull it back on track, which is what the workflow script helps them to do. So if the workflow script is the consistent 80% of the time common way it should go, then a frequently asked questions script, which is the third type, is how to deal with the variables of that conversation. So 90% or 80% of the time we follow this initial call script or the workflow script. And then for all of those other variable situations, we develop a frequently asked questions script or a response script or an objection script, whatever you want to call it. But this is just a set of things that may or may not happen, questions that may or may not get asked, a variable that may or may not come up. And so we build a script for those things. The prompt is the question, and the script is the answer, or the prompt is the situation that could occur, or the variable within the client situation which would cause a different solution. So situation and then response, or suggestion, question, answer, situation, response. So you build these, they're kind of independent of each other, like this one may not relate to this one, but it's just a list of these common things that could typically happen or not. So what happens when you're training is you teach someone the frequently asked questions script or the objection script, and they memorize these things. I was working with a sales team one time, and they started with a frequently asked questions script for their needs assessment process, and they kind of like weren't getting this whole, like what are all the variables? And in their minds there were so many, but then when I asked them to write them down, they couldn't think of them. And they started saying things like, well, it's different, it's so different every time, and I never say the same thing twice, that why would I write down that one 6 months ago that never comes up again? Well, what we figured out over time is that they really, each of them were responding to these objections or to these variable situations in somewhat similar ways, but in some cases different ways. But the actual question or variable situation was consistent. In other words, they all experienced it at one point or another. So we started just by making a few objection scripts and a few frequently asked questions. And then what they did over time is they had these lunch and learn meetings where they would sit and talk about what they heard that week. What was the variable situation? And they started listing them out. And over time, they had this amazing objection script for their needs assessment process that was like maybe 20 different objections long, and these great answers or solutions that they all collaborated on for how to respond to these questions and to these situations. And that became this just extremely valuable training tool for new salespeople. So generally 3 types of scripts. Doesn't mean there can't be different ones, but these are the ones I see. Fixed scripts or stable scripts, workflow scripts that go in a order, starting a conversation all the way to the end, and then frequently asked questions, which kind of handles the variable situations in the process. These tools, by the way, can all be reordered just by dragging up and dragging down. So you can put, like, you know, the fixed script at the top, and then you can put the initial script, and then the frequently asked questions script. These are all reorder. You can drag and drop to reorder these as well. Checklists, work plans, they all work like that. If the process doesn't have any verbal interaction in it, there's, you know, no conversation, then just don't use this tool. You don't want to force a script when there isn't one. Another thing that I see often is that people will put the script in the work plan. So they'll get to a place in the work plan where you make a phone call or have a conversation, and then they'll put it in quotes in the work plan itself. It's better to build it in the script template and then make a link from the work plan to that. So if this is the referral process, and I'm going through and scheduling the introduction appointment, I'm sending out all this information, I'm completing the checklist, and then I get to the place where I actually call the customer or I call the referral source, I would put a link right in this task saying use initial call script. Use initial call script to call customer. And then that would take me to this. It's better to isolate the script on its own and have it be its own template. When someone's learning, they're going to follow the work plan, learn the tasks, memorize the script, but they may want to go specifically to the script whenever they want to have it in front of them. So rather than having it embedded in the work plan, pull it out and make it a specific script item or tool. Next tool down is called Uploaded Files. And what happens in the Uploaded Files tool is you're able to take documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and PDF documents, and upload them to the process. So to upload a file, you just give the file a name. Then you give it an objective. These objectives are important because they show someone or they tell someone what this is used for. Why is it here? So remember to fill in the objectives. Then I'm going to hit Choose File, and now I'm looking at my network, looking at my own computer network, and I would go to a document that is a Word, PowerPoint, or PDF document, and then I hit Open, and I see it filled in this Choose File field, and then I hit Create. Now TouchStone's taking a copy of that file, and it just moved it up inside this process. So you see it down here. So TouchStone attaches the file and then moves it up inside the process. What that means is it now lives in TouchStone. So it lives on the internet inside of TouchStone, and wherever anyone has an internet access and access to the process, they can access this file. So it's like Google Docs in that way. You upload the whole file. To view a file, I would just select this View File. So there's 2 files in this process now. I hit this one. I'm going to see the same thing. And I hit View File. Now what TouchStone's doing is it's launching whatever software program that this file was created in. So this is a PDF, and you see it down here at the bottom of my screen. And if I select it, it's going to open this PDF. and show me the file. This right now is inside of Adobe Reader. If this was a Word document, TouchStone would have launched Word and shown me that document inside of Word. This document right now is still in TouchStone, but this version of it, or this copy of it, is not in TouchStone. It's on my computer. So the point I'm making is, if I make a change to this document, I need to save it and re-upload it, because the changes I'm making to it aren't happening in TouchStone. They're happening in Adobe or Word or Excel, whatever format the document was originally in. So if I've made a change to this referral letter document when it was outside of TouchStone, I hit this little edit pencil, and then I need to hit Choose File, find that changed document, and hit Open. And then once I save it, TouchStone will override the original one with this changed version. So let me go through that again. I'll leave page. So this is the document I just uploaded. If I view it, now it's downloading this document to Word, and now I'm opening it in Word. If I make a change to this typing I'm doing is in Microsoft Word right now. It's not in TouchStone. I would go File, Save As, save it somewhere I can find it. I usually delete these once I save them, because once they're in TouchStone, you don't need it again. Then I hit this little edit pencil, and then I hit Choose File, and I go to that document, and I hit Open. And now I'm about to replace the old one with the new one. I save it, and now it's in TouchStone. If I view a file and I do nothing to it, I'm just viewing it, printing it, reading it, I don't have to do anything. I just close it. It's still in TouchStone. These files are still here. The only way to change them or get rid of them is to delete them from TouchStone, or to go and replace an old one with a new one. So that's the Uploaded Files tool. Use the Uploaded Files tool if you have a document which is in one of these formats that you want to preserve in that format. So for whatever reason, you want it to stay in that format. Excel spreadsheets, any kind of Excel document that you need to do calculations, you're going to need it to be an uploaded file, because there's no tool in TouchStone which does calculations. We don't have a spreadsheet tool built into TouchStone. So if you have that kind of tool in your for your process, then you want to upload that as an Excel spreadsheet. PowerPoint's kind of the same thing. If you want it to be a presentation document, then you'll need to upload it as a PowerPoint presentation. If it's a Word document and it's a form or text, and it's not like a form that links to other forms, and it's not a complicated form, you can always put that into the Form tool, which I'm going to show you here in a second. But rather than it being an uploaded file in Word, if it's just flat text or a simple form, then put it into the Form tool. Just because then you don't have to deal with like the view file, it launches, there it is, or if you change it, then you have to do the save as and re-upload it. There's just a few less steps if you have it as a form. If it's a PDF generally and you want it to be preserved in that format, then obviously keep it as a PDF. So the Uploaded Files tool is great if you have manuals of some kind that are in a PDF version. So it's like instruction or a PDF manual of how your equipment works, something like that. You upload the whole manual. Then you can reference it in the work plan. You can say, hey, access this manual when you have X, Y, and Z problem. Use the Uploaded Files tool for your master documents related to the process. So a master PowerPoint presentation, master spreadsheet. This becomes a great place to keep these relevant current documents that are related to the process. TouchStone can become a repository or a place to keep the most current versions of all of your documents. So not only is it for training purposes, but employees can be trained to go right to TouchStone to find the most current version. A lot of times on our networks you have contracts and PDFs or spreadsheets that you use, and people are accessing those and doing file save as, and 10 people do that 10 times a day, and you've got all these different versions of documents all over the place, and nobody really knows what the most current version is. So you can keep TouchStone as that place where you keep the most current versions of things. Next tool down is the form tool. If you want to build a form, same as the other tools, you just hit the header here, and then you put in the name of your form, put in the purpose of it, what is it used for in the objective, and then you hit create. So now I've got 3 forms down here. If I want to gain access to this form or start working on it, I just click right here where it says click here to begin adding content, and then boom, the form opens. The form tool, if you look at it just like this, is kind of like a blank Word document. It's got all the main functionalities of Word as well as this table building area or functions. So you can create a table inside of TouchStone, build columns and rows, insert that, and then actually build a form directly inside of TouchStone. Or you can go to Word and cut and paste a form into TouchStone, and then you would have a form that you can use. These functions allow you to make the outside of the form columns and rows black, or fill in colors into the rows, add rows, delete rows. So this is table building, similar to how you would see it in Microsoft Word. You can also use the form tool to just write text. So this is just a blank text field right here. So here I could write paragraphs of information. I could write sample emails. I could put in explanations of something that didn't fit into the work plans for whatever reason. I could write letters, sample letters that we use or send out. So this form tool is customizable in that way. It can be used to build forms, or it can be used to just write blank text. I've also seen people use the image uploader here to insert images that are 8.5 by 11. So if you want an image that displays really large, like this, and you don't want it to be inside of a work plan for whatever reason, you want it to display 8.5 by 11, oops, too far, then you can use the image uploader here, take an image or take that large image, and then insert it into the form. And then you can see it's going to be big, so it fills the screen with this large image. So if for whatever reason this image needed to be large, or you wanted to display big, and it didn't seem to fit into the work plan tasks for whatever reason or whatever tool, then you can make the image here, and then you can link it to the task where it's used. I've seen people build flowcharts like in Visio or even in Microsoft Word, and then take a screen capture of that flowchart and then stick it into the form tool if you're really liking the idea of having a visual flowchart. You can always upload them as files as well, but this is another way to do it. Here's an example of a form that's been built in TouchStone. So this is a referral contact sheet where you can actually fill out columns and rows. Here's a planner. So you can kind of build fancy columns and rows and do colors. This one I think was built in Word and then cut and pasted here into TouchStone. For forms that are filled out, remember you can also go to the home screen function, to the control panel, and employees can access these forms and fill them out and save them back to TouchStone. Next tool down is the policy tool. So to build a policy note, it's the same instructions as the rest of the tools. You just hit the header there. I clicked right on it. I put in the name of the policy. Too descriptive with the names because sometimes you start to describe the policy itself in the title. So keep it short because you're going to have lots of room within the policy note to document the policy. Create. This, by the way, if any of you haven't seen this before, this is telling me that I have a redundant policy named this. So anytime you get this error message, this is just telling you you're about to create a process tool that has the same name as another one that's already in TouchStone. So I could click here to see this policy note that has the same name. It's an effort to try to stop you from duplicating titles. So this is the policy template, and it's pretty straightforward. It's got to from, so you want to put to from a position title. It's got a date or effective date to it. It has new or revised, and then down here is where you put the statement. So use policies when you've got something of the utmost importance to say about the process. This is what a policy note looks like when it's finished. Use it when you've got a rule, something legal or compliance related, something safety related, something that's like of the utmost of importance to your company culture. So things that are related to the process this is in. So anything related to the referral process that is of the utmost of importance that I want to get across to employees. It's not just something they need to know, it's something that they need to really know and sign off that they agree to. If it's just something they need to know, you can always put it in the expectations of the work plan. But here again, if you want it to stand out, you want it to be a rule that has to be followed, then you can put it in the policy section. Sometimes when there are difficult things happening in a certain department or in the company overall, or there's a certain culture that's been created by a negative employee or a bad manager and you've gotten rid of that person but it still exists, like high pressure sales or people just not caring about certain things or messiness, bad attitudes, cynicism, whatever it is, you can create a policy around it. Make it a positive yet clear thing saying this is no longer a part of how we're going to work. We will not pressure our referral sources to give us referrals. Once they've said no, we say thank you very much and that's the end of it. Or we will absolutely do this or that. Create it in a policy note in the process and then send an email out and say, hey everyone, there's a new policy and it's been built for these reasons and I want everyone to look at it and then mark it as complete in your control panel. Bring it up in a meeting. Sometimes laying down the law in a positive way and explaining why can change things. It can turn it quite quickly, quicker than just trying to repeat yourself over time until everyone gets it. Next tool down is our video tool. So what this tool does is it allows you to take videos related to the process and then upload them to the process. So these are this is for training purposes. If the process lends itself to a video, in other words, it's visual in some way, then shoot an ad hoc, simple video of the process and then upload it to the process. What this does is it just enhances the training. It just makes your process documentation that much better because somebody can study and read what they need to do here in the work plan and then they can watch a visual of it. So videos can be actual videos where you pull your camera out or your phone and you video somebody doing something or you video how something's supposed to look or some type of visual of a job site or a customer, and then save that video back to your computer and then upload it to the process. Or they could be screen capture videos. So I think you've heard me mention this tool called Jing. It's right up here on my screen. And what this does is it allows you to take 5-minute free videos. So here's the video. It gives you a countdown, 1, 2, 3. And then it starts recapturing my screen movements. So I click here, and then I'm going to go here, and I'm talking into the computer, explaining where I'm going, why I'm doing it. You can see here I've got 5 free minutes here, and I'm using 15 seconds out of 5 so far, and I'm clicking here and pointing here. You can follow the work plan, and you say, okay, in the work plan, the first thing we're going to do is go to the referral letter, and then this is what it looks like and how you fill it out, and then you explain the steps on your computer screen, and then when you're done, you just hit finish, And then Jing has this video, which you can save and then upload to TouchStone. This only records 5 minutes, but honestly, a 5-minute video for training purposes is a great length. So if you've got a big, long, complicated process, break it up into 5-minute videos. That's ideal, because someone could follow along the first 6 tasks, and then there's a video for how to do those tasks. If you want longer videos, you can use your own recording devices, or also Camtasia, or I think Snagit's got a longer recording, but those are all paid programs. So don't underestimate the video. It's an easy thing to do, simple, shoot the video and then upload it. Don't spend a ton of time and create Hollywood productions. Just keep them kind of ad hoc and simple, because things change, and you don't want to have spent hundreds of dollars on a fancy video that's just going to change in 3 or 4 months. So keep the training videos kind of light and simple. For some of you in more common trades, you can go to YouTube a lot of times and find instructional videos on things. And a lot of times you can download those, and then you can upload them to your system if it allows you to. For like management or certain workshops and classes and kind of knowledge you want to get across to employees, you can find free things on YouTube that you can use and then upload to TouchStone, and then it becomes kind of a part of your training inside of your TouchStone account. Audio files are the same idea, except for it's just an MP3 file and not a video file. I like to see audio files when there's a script in a process, because that lets me know there's a conversation that's happening, and it would be good to have like a role play of that conversation, examples of how that's supposed to sound. So if you have an initial call process that has a workflow script in it, you can record actual conversations that happen and then upload those to the process in the audio tool. Or you can do a role play of it, how it's supposed to sound, how an objection script tends to sound, and then you can upload those to the process. You can do mock audio files of how it's not supposed to sound, so what it sounds like when it's done badly, and then what it sounds like when it's done well. So this can be then, again, a great resource for someone who's learning how it's supposed to sound, and then they can hear that in an MP3 file. So for both of these tools, you just hit the title, and then you're going to give the audio file a name. Then you hit Choose File. For the audio, MP3 is the acceptable file type. And then you save it, and then TouchStone takes a few minutes. With audio files, it's pretty fast, so it takes a few minutes for it to upload. And then once it's uploaded, it's in TouchStone. So this audio file lives in TouchStone. It's not a link to anywhere else. And when I hit this play button, it'll play. And then video, same thing. The acceptable video types, the most common is MP4, but all these others are acceptable as well. So you want to convert or save your video as an MP4 file. And then you give the video a name. You hit Choose File, find it, hit the Save button, and then you'll get the loading screen. It usually takes about half the time of the video for it to upload. So if it's 5 minutes, it's going to take maybe 1.5 to 2 minutes to upload. If you're uploading an hour-long video, then it's going to take a while for it to upload to TouchStone. Once it's in TouchStone, though, it's there. It won't take any time for you to click and hear and watch the video. The upload is what takes time. So one technique is you can upload a longer video if you like, and then you can open up TouchStone in another browser, like in Firefox. I'm in Chrome now. I can open it in Firefox, and then I can be using TouchStone in Firefox while my video is uploading using the Chrome. Okay. One other thing about videos, too. Here's a video that's been uploaded. This button here will download the video. So this uploads it, uploads a new video if you wanted to replace this one with a new one, but this button will download the video. All right, so that is the process tools. So just as a recap, when you start to document a process, think of the work plans first, what they're going to be, how many of them you're going to have, title them. Think about if you're going to need a checklist for the process. Does it need quality control? Do you need verification that it was done? Think if it needs a script. Is there a conversation that happens in the process? If there is, and you know there's going to be, identify the script title. Do you have any files or forms or documents that you need to be accessible within the process? Do you need a form that you need to build, that you can build, or is there some kind of a letter or text that is important for the process? Are there any essential policies related to it? Can you shoot a video? It doesn't lend itself to that. If there's a script, can you do a role play, an audio? Usually these two tools, and they're at the bottom, is because you kind of consider them last. You think, after it's documented, can I do this as well? All right, so let's talk about the system of the week here for a second. I chose to do time management because this is something that there's a fabulous tool in our library for it, and it's something that every business kind of needs to use and understand. It's also timely because what we've talked about in the first 3 sessions is listing all your processes in the 4 functions list, building your organization chart and all your job descriptions, and then starting to document your processes using the process tools. At that point, time management becomes essential because now you've done your 5 to 10 hours to get organized in TouchStone, and now you're about to start documenting. And all these questions of when is the documentation going to get done? Who's going to do it? When's it going to happen? We don't have time. We're so busy. All these things kind of come into play. And if you don't think about a regular routine for getting it done, and you don't help your employees kind of organize their time in a way where they have a little bit each week to spend working strategically, building things and not just doing things, you don't think about that all in advance, then it gets to be just this thing that never quite happens. When people quit using TouchStone, they quit documenting their processes, it's because 9 times out of 10, they just don't have time. They don't spend the time. They haven't found the time. They get so busy. They don't do it. They ask their employees to do it. Well, they don't have the time. Months roll by, and they're like, we got to get back to documenting the processes. Oh, everyone's too busy. So this is this vicious cycle that continues and continues to get in the way of every business is having process dependency and really you're learning to use processes. So the best routine for over time getting your processes documented is to sit and think about who's going to be accountable for it. And you can look at your organization chart here and consider key employees and managers, or even yourself, and what you're going to start to document and when. You can go to each position. So if I have a salesperson and I know that I want them to be documenting their processes, or I want the sales department to do it as a team, or there's one key person that I want them to start to work on them, I would go to the sales job description and I click the title right here, and I can even say in the title, this is my process to work on and I want it to be done by the 20th of this month. I want to see a first draft, and so then I give it my name and a title, and a due date, and then I save it. And then I tell the sales employee, go to your job description in TouchStone, click on it, you're going to see a process right at the top that I want you to work on, and it has your initials in it and a tentative due date. So you're assigning the processes and helping the employee to kind of spend time on it over the week until it's done. And you can do this all throughout TouchStone. Assign a process, assign a process. All the employee needs to do is go to that job description. They see it right there on the job description with their initials in it. They could even search for their initials if they can't find it. And then they see the due date. This helps them know when you want them to have it done by, and it also helps you understand when you've told them that you've delegated this and you need to follow up on the 20th. So time management. This is the process on time management. So there are tools within this process, lots of tools that help employees kind of understand what it means to manage your time. There's all of these work plans on daily planning, creating a daily activity logs. This is a great one on eliminating interruptions. So this is kind of study material for you or the employees to look at. There's even a tutorial right here on implementing a time management system. The essentials or the basic, I think, of good time management is, number one, knowing how to plan your day. So this is a tool called a daily planner. And in this tool, and you may be able to do this inside, well, I know you can do this inside of Outlook if you use Outlook, or if you have some other kind of calendaring process. But sometimes it helps to keep things simple and to not have to worry about programming it into a calendar in some way, but just to start with people on getting them to kind of see how to organize their day. So everyone has a schedule for the day more or less, and you want to put in appointments that happen throughout the day or meetings that are set in fixed times. Then you want to list out what are the high priority tasks to get done that day. What are the high priority phone calls you need to make? Inside of TouchStone, all this is editable, so if this doesn't make sense for you, you can just change it. Just click the title and I can change this, or I can change the hours. So it's about having the employee think about what they're going to do that day. What do they need to get done? Oftentimes we start in on a day and suddenly things just start rolling, phones ringing, people are coming in, and before you know it, you're at the end of the day thinking, what did I do today? So this simple act of spending 5 or 10 minutes in the morning saying, what are my key appointments for the day? If you have a calendar, you can just block this off, and knowing that you know what it is on your calendar, and then listing of the tasks. So what this means is my high priority tasks, in the times that I don't have appointments, I'm going to do these tasks or return these phone calls. Help your employees and yourself to think about the interruptions. So these two tools, eliminating interruptions. Interruptions can be as simple as checking your email every 5 seconds. Always looking at the email, always looking at the email. That's an interruption. Rather than doing that, have certain times during the day when you check your email. Half an hour in the morning, half an hour at lunch, half an hour at the end of the day. Answering phone calls all throughout the day. There are some positions who have to do that. So there's yeah buts that people are going to throw up to all of this. So think through those things. If it's a position that is on the phone all the time, then that's their routine work. But there are many positions out there where people are answering the phone all day long, and these things are not emergencies. So isolate emergency from non-emergency, and think if you can build a schedule in for when you will be available to answer phone calls. When I get a voicemail message and the person says, I will be answering phone calls between 9 and 10 and between 11 and 12 and at the end of the day, I'm like, that person knows good time management. That's somebody who's controlling their time. So plan out the day. Put process documentation in as an appointment. It's not a high priority task. It's not an other thing you need to do. Put it in half an hour a day, an hour a day, as if it was the most important client calling you that day. This is the time to work strategically on something. Look at this with your employees, and tell them between 10 and 11, work on processes. If you have an emergency that falls into here and you have to use that time for that emergency, roll it over to the next hour. So have them consider it to be an appointment that they have, and consider what's doable for them. Can it be 1 hour on Monday and 1 hour on Wednesday? Can it be half an hour on both days? Could it be 2 hours on a Friday? So help them kind of plan it into their day. This active planning increases efficiency and helps the better use of time. Even if someone plans their day out at the beginning of the day and then they get to the end of the day and only a third of it happened the way that they thought, well, number one, they've learned a little bit more about how to plan better the next day. And number two, at least a third of that day was somewhat planned. And the more they do it over time, the more of a habit it becomes, and the more efficient you and your employees will be. If you have an employee who's all over the place, and you're always asking yourself, God, I wonder if they're actually being efficient done. I don't know what they're doing. Think about doing a time log or having them do a time log. So this is just a simple time log. All they would do is for a week or two, just fill in what they're doing every 30 minutes or so. The time they started the activity, they put the category of work. So if the activity is answer the phone, well, then the category, what was that phone call about? Well, it was about sales. Just have them jot it down. Some employees resist this. They don't want to do it because they're like, oh, this is going to take too much time. It doesn't take that much time. I think I saw a study a while ago that said it takes 15 minutes or something in an 8-hour day to sit down and jot down your activities if you're doing it briefly. It's not that much time. It's worth that 15 minutes for them to get a sense of what they're doing and how they're doing it, what they're spending their time on, and for you to understand what they're spending their time on. Position this with them as, this isn't me being big brother trying to, know what you do. It's more like, let's see what's happening here so we can help there be less multitasking and more efficiency. Let's both understand together what's happening. So have them do this for like 2 weeks, 1 week if they can, and then analyze it together. Sit down and look at it. And ask yourself, first of all, what's interrupting them here, which is important? Are they doing things they're not supposed to be doing? Sometimes this can lead to bad process documentation, or processes not being documented, so they're doing things just erratically because there's no system for it. But more importantly, it can help you go here to the daily planning, because in daily planning, you're being able to, help plan out what might be a mess of work into more of a schedule. So I'm just looking at a question that somebody typed in that I think is relevant to what we're talking about here. So they're asking if, let me look at it one more time. So they're asking if multiple employees can have different time logs, or should have different time logs, which they should. And then she's also asking if, related to policies, how you get employees to be able to see or mark off policies. So let's go, and I might go a few minutes over for those of you who can stay on the line. If you can't, that's fine too. So let's go over here to the home screen. So I think what the person is asking is related to the using of these tools. So the using of a policy, implementing it with employees, or the actual using of a daily planner or an activity time tracking in TouchStone. So over where we were over here is where the templates are created, where the documentation is created. Here in the control panel is where people use them. So if I go to the salesperson, for example, so I'm a salesperson, that's what it means when I have a control panel. And I go to this time management process, which is right here under my daily group. I select it. So I'm logged in as me with my own username and password. So the work I do here in this control panel, I'm the only one who can see that. Me and my manager are the only ones who can see it. So this is individual and unique to me. The time management process may be linked to everybody's job descriptions, or 5 or 6 people's job descriptions on the org chart. And all 5 or 6 of those people log in with their own usernames and passwords and access the same process. But when I go to complete it or use it, again, it's unique to me. So here's the time log. When I click this, it's going to give me a copy of the time log right here. So I can go down and put the time in that I started with, what I did. So I'm filling this out. And I can keep this open in TouchStone all day long. I probably suggest that they save it at least once. So now it's date and time stamped it and saved it. But I can leave this open in TouchStone all day long. The computers can. The employees can too. So they can fill it out throughout the day. Then once it's saved, it's going to date and time stamp it, and you save it last at the end of the day. And then it's storing this time log here in this completed folder. So if they had to log out of TouchStone, then they could save it, and then if they wanted to go back to it, they go to this completed folder, go to it, call it up, and then fill it out some more. So it's completed and saved. I clicked the wrong one, but it's completed and saved here in this completed folder. The next day, when I'm doing the time log for the next day, I just select it, and there's the form again that I'm starting it on the next day and time, and when I save it, it's going to date and time stamp it for that next day. So each individual employee could be filling out these time logs to their control panels. Once something's saved, they can export it in Word or print it if they want to as well. So if you want it to be external or outside of TouchStone, that you can accomplish that as well by exporting it to Word or printing it. Then at the end of the week, a manager could go here, and you could go and search for a specific position or employee that you know is going to be doing it, like Sam, Sally, whoever's doing it, or you can leave this blank and search everybody's. And you could look for just the forms, give a date range. If you run a report, then you would see a list of all of the time logs that they had completed for that week, and you could go to them and look at them. For a policy, what I think is good is if, let me go back to, if I'm an employee and there's a policy that I need to, a new policy that I need to review, I go to that process. I'm in the control panel. This is that referral process and all the tools of it. And I go down to the policy and read it. So I'd read this policy as I was instructed to do. And then I would put read and agree. And then I save it. And it date and time stamps it, and it marks this as I have read and agreed to this with the date and time. And that, again, is also stored in the process, so in this completed folder. I've got other examples of this, but this is what it looks like. The manager can then run a report, or they could go through management review right here and say, I wonder if Sam did what I asked him to do and actually read the referral process, new policy. I'd go down to it, and I'd see here in this completed folder that he's read and agreed to it. So that's kind of how I would handle policies. It's not, I've had someone ask me this a while ago, we're not HIPAA compliant here. You can't do signatures. It's not, it's not legally binding in that way, but it's good enough for management purposes, because the key here is if you have a policy and you want to make sure employees have read it, that they go and read it and give you some evidence that they did. And then if there's a problem, I can go back to that employee and I can say, hey, here in your control panel, you read this policy on this date and time. Do you remember doing that? Yes. So what's the problem? What is the issue? And you can really talk about what the truth is about why they're not following it. And you bypass all this, well, I never got it, I didn't understand, I didn't read it, well, I told you must have misunderstood, you didn't really send it to me. You get rid of all of that, and you zoom right in on the point.